Hello, everyone. In this unit, we're going to discuss the theories behind how we learn. So, first of all, what is learning? Well, learning is a change in behavior that results from experience. And this differentiates from other types of changes of behaviors that maybe do not result from experience. You could think as somebody becomes sleepy, for instance, that their behavior changes, but that's not due to an experience that they've had. So learning is very important that we define that is that we have some type of experience that then results in the behavior change. In this unit, we're going to discuss three different ways that people learn. One's going to be non associative learning, and then we're going to talk about associative learning, and then we're going to talk about ways that we can watch others and learn. So, if we're looking at the biology of learning, if you remember, we have neurons that communicate within the nervous system, and these neurons connect with each other. So when we learn something, there is a physical change in these synaptic connections between the neurons. There's actually a physical strengthening of these connections as new connections are actually formed when we learn something. So, as I said, we're going to talk about three different types of learning. We're going to talk about non associative learning, which is learning about different stimuli. And this can be when our response to stimuli either increase or decrease. And then we're going to talk about associative learning, which is about the relationships between informations. And this can include when we learn when a stimulus predicts something else from happening, or when we do a behavior and it leads to a certain outcome. And then we're going to talk about three different ways that we can learn from watching others. This includes observational learning, where we watch somebody engage in behavior and then we can do it, or modeling, which is when we imitate what someone else is doing, or vicarious conditioning, where we see the consequences from another person and then that shapes our own behavior. So, first of all, let's talk about non associative learning. This is the basic, most basic form of learning. This is adjusting how we respond to stimuli. So, one type of non associative learning is habituation. This is where we have a decrease in behavioral response after lengthy or repeated exposure to a stimulus. And this typically happens when we've established that stimulus it doesn't have any kind of relevance to it. It's neither harmful or rewarding. As an example of this, I was back at my parents' house for Christmas, and while I was talking to my mother, I heard a train, and it was really loud. And I actually asked her, I was like, "Has this train always been that loud?" And she said, "Yes." But I didn't notice it in a house that I grew up in that was honestly a little closer to the train tracks than maybe I'd realized. I didn't notice the sound of the train. And that's because it just became background noise. Even in my current house that I live in now, I there's a flight path to Hobby Airport and lots of airplanes fly over my house. But I don't typically notice when I first moved here, I noticed the airplanes a lot, but now I barely do unless something sounds different. Every once in a while, I will notice the sound of a plane, but there's something different about it. It's louder, it's got a different pitch to it. And so those are the types of behavioral signals that are or stimuli that come in, something that's different, that's novel. But for just the typical plane flying over, I don't even notice it anymore. Now, kind of the opposite of this is sensitization. This is where you have an increase in behavioral response after a lengthy or repeated exposure to a stimulus. And so the idea behind this is that it becomes heightened preparation in a situation that could have potential harm or reward. And so you could think of somebody who maybe has come back from a conflict zone, a war zone, a soldier, and then they become very jumpy to any kind of loud noise. That if someone slams a door or a car backfires or something happens, that then they might have an exaggerated behavioral response to that because they have become sensitized to those kind of large, loud, sharp noises.